Number 10. Trapping furs for trade. For over 2 centuries, the American fur trade was the economic engine of the frontier. But long after the great trading companies faded, individual trappers continued earning a living from the woods. Through the 1800s and well into the 1900s, men and boys across the rural Midwest and South ran trap lines during winter months, catching muskrat, raccoon, mink, and beaver. A prime muskrat pelt brought between 50 cents and $1 in the 1930s, and a skilled trapper could take 30 to 50 pelts in a single season. Farm boys supplemented their family's income by running trap lines before and after school, selling pelts to traveling fur buyers who drove county roads in battered trucks. The income was seasonal, but significant. In some rural counties, fur money was the difference between keeping the farm and losing it. As suburban sprawl consumed wild habitat and synthetic fabrics replaced fur, the trapping economy quietly collapsed. The last fur buyers disappeared from rural highways in the 1980s, and with them went a way of life that had sustained American families since before the Revolution. Number 9. Shoe shining on city streets. In every American city from the 1880s through the 1960s, shoe shine boys and men set up wooden boxes on street corners and outside train stations, offering a buff and polish for a nickel or a dime. The work required almost no startup capital: a box, a few tins of polish, some rags, and a pair of strong hands. Italian immigrant boys dominated the trade in New York. Black men held the corners in Chicago, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. A good shiner at Grand Central Terminal could earn $5 or $6 daily in tips alone during the 1940s. Solid working-class money. The shoe shine stand was also a listening post, a place where businessmen talked freely and shiners learned the rhythms of money and power. Some used what they overheard to start their own businesses. Others simply survived, one pair of shoes at a time. The profession faded as casual dress codes replaced leather dress shoes and sneakers conquered American feet. Today, a shoe shine stand is a novelty. But for 80 years, it was the entry point into the American economy for men who had nothing else to offer but effort. Number 8. Peddling patent medicines. Before the Food and Drug Administration existed, anyone with a wagon, a recipe, and a good story could travel from town to town selling cure-all tonics. In the late 1800s, patent medicine sales in the United States exceeded $75 million annually, and a huge share went to independent peddlers working county fairs, frontier towns, and rural crossroads. The products were dubious at best. Most were mixtures of alcohol, opium, or cocaine, blended with herbs and marketed as remedies for everything from tuberculosis to baldness. But the salesmanship was extraordinary. Peddlers staged elaborate shows with music, magic tricks, and fake testimonials from planted audience members. A good medicine showman could clear $50 in a single night at a county fair, an astronomical sum when factory workers earned $10 weekly. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 eventually brought regulation, but the traveling peddler survived in diminished form into the 1930s. The modern pharmaceutical industry owes its origin story to these wandering hustlers who proved that Americans would pay anything for the promise of good health. Number 7. Midwifery and folk healing. In every rural community and immigrant neighborhood, women delivered babies, set broken bones, brewed herbal remedies, and nursed the sick, all for a fee or an exchange of goods. Before hospitals became accessible to ordinary Americans, the local midwife was the entire healthcare system. In the early 1900s, midwives delivered roughly half of all babies born in the United States. In the rural South, granny midwives, most of them Black women, charged between $2 and $5 per delivery, when a doctor charged $25. Some were paid in chickens, flour, or labor instead of cash. Their knowledge was encyclopedic, learned from mothers and grandmothers, covering everything from breech births to childhood fevers. The American Medical Association campaigned aggressively to eliminate midwifery in the early 20th century, calling it primitive and dangerous. State after state passed laws requiring medical licensing, effectively criminalizing the women who had kept their communities alive for generations. The current resurgence of midwifery and herbalism is a rediscovery of knowledge that was never lost. It was taken. Number 6. Selling firewood for heat. In the days before natural gas pipelines and electric heating, firewood was a necessity that every household purchased, and cutting and selling it was one of the most accessible ways to earn money in rural America. A man with an axe, a crosscut saw, and a horse-drawn wagon could fell trees on his own woodlot or on public land, buck the logs into stove lengths, and sell cords to town dwellers who had no land of their own. A cord of hardwood in 1910 sold for between $3 and $6 depending on the region, and a strong man could cut and deliver a cord in 2 days. Entire families participated. Fathers felled the trees, sons split the rounds, mothers and daughters stacked the wagon. That income carried rural households through winter when farm work stopped and cash ran dry. As oil furnaces and central heating spread through American homes in the mid-20th century, demand for firewood plummeted. What had been an essential winter economy became a weekend hobby, but for a century and a half, the woodpile was as important to the American household as the weekly paycheck. Here's where the story gets personal, because the next entries aren't just about forgotten economies. They're about the people your own family might have been. Number 5. Fortune-telling and spiritualism. In the decades after the Civil War, a grief-stricken nation turned to spiritualists, mediums, and fortune-tellers in numbers that seem almost unbelievable today. By some estimates, 11 million Americans consulted spiritualists in the 1870s, out of a population of roughly 40 million. Many of the most successful mediums were women, and the income could be substantial. A popular medium in New York or Chicago charged between $1 and $5 per sitting in the 1880s and could see a dozen clients daily. Some traveled the lecture circuit, filling theaters and earning hundreds of dollars per appearance. The Fox sisters, who launched the spiritualist movement in 1848 from a farmhouse in upstate New York, became national celebrities. Fortune-telling was one of the few professions where a woman could earn more than a man. It required no formal education, no physical strength, and no approval from male gatekeepers. Cities eventually passed ordinances against fortune-telling, classifying it alongside vagrancy and prostitution. But the practice never truly disappeared. It simply moved indoors behind curtained windows and word-of-mouth referrals, where it remains today. Number 4. Collecting scrap metal for cash. During both world wars, scrap metal became patriotic gold. But long before the government launched collection drives, Americans had been gathering and selling scrap for generations. In the early 1900s, junk dealers in immigrant neighborhoods bought old pots, broken tools, discarded wire, and any piece of metal that could be melted down and reused. A junkyard in 1920s Brooklyn might process 10 tons of scrap weekly, paying collectors by the pound and selling to foundries and steel mills at a markup. Children scoured vacant lots and construction sites. Old men with pushcarts worked the alleys. During the Depression, scrap collecting became a lifeline for the unemployed. When wartime demand sent metal prices soaring in the 1940s, scrap dealers earned more than many factory workers. The industry eventually consolidated into corporate recycling operations, squeezing out the individual collectors who had built it. But for the better part of a century, the American scrap trade was the domain of people with no credentials, no capital, and no options, turning other people's trash into survival. Number 3. Homemade liquor during Prohibition. When the 18th Amendment banned alcohol sales in 1920, it didn't stop Americans from drinking. It just redirected the profits. Estimates suggest the illegal liquor trade generated between $3 and $5 billion annually during Prohibition, an astonishing figure in an era when the entire federal budget was under $4 billion. And much of that money flowed not to organized crime bosses, but to ordinary Americans. Housewives brewed beer in their basements. Farmers fermented cider in their barns. Italian immigrants made wine in their cellars, technically legal for personal use, and then quietly sold the surplus to neighbors. In cities, speakeasies numbered in the tens of thousands. New York alone had an estimated 30,000 by 1927. The bartenders, bouncers, delivery drivers, and lookouts who staffed them were all earning money outside the formal economy. Outlaw what people want, and you just hand profits to the brave. When you outlaw a product people desire, you don't eliminate the market. You just hand the profits to anyone willing to take the risk. Number 2. Backyard chickens and egg sales. It sounds quaint now, but keeping a flock of laying hens was one of the most reliable income sources for American women from the colonial period straight through the 1950s. The phrase egg money was literal. Women controlled the chicken flock, collected the eggs, and kept the income as their own. In many rural households, egg money paid for groceries, fabric, medicine, and school supplies. By 1900, a hen could lay around 80 to 100 eggs per year, and a dozen eggs sold for 15 to 25 cents at the general store. A flock of 30 hens meant steady weekly income that didn't depend on a husband's wages or the weather cooperating with the crops. The economic independence this gave women was significant and largely unacknowledged. When industrial egg farms scaled up in the 1950s and 60s, prices collapsed to the point where backyard flocks couldn't compete. Suburban zoning laws banned chickens from residential areas. One of the oldest and most reliable forms of female economic independence in American history was quietly legislated out of existence. And finally, number 1. Taking in piecework and sewing at home. The most widespread way Americans made money without a traditional job was also the most invisible. For over a century, women across America took in piecework from garment factories, assembling shirts, stitching buttonholes, finishing seams, and rolling cigars at their kitchen tables while minding children and cooking supper. In 1900, an estimated 250,000 women in New York City alone worked in the home-based garment trade, earning between $2 and $6 weekly for labor that factory workers earned twice as much to perform. The tenement apartments of the Lower East Side were both homes and workshops. Children as young as 5 pulled basting threads. Grandmothers trimmed loose ends. Entire families worked by gaslight until midnight to meet quotas. The conditions were the subject of some of America's earliest labor investigations. Reformers called it sweated labor and fought to move it into regulated factories. But in doing so, they eliminated the only form of paid work available to millions of women who couldn't leave their homes. The sewing machine in the parlor, the pile of cut fabric on the kitchen table, the click of scissors after the children went to bed. That was the sound of American women earning money on their own terms long before anyone called it a side hustle. It was survival, dignity, and independence stitched into every seam. These 20 forgotten income methods tell a story that no economics textbook includes. From the rag picker's cart to the washerwoman's tub, from the moonshiner's still to the midwife's hands, Americans found ways to survive that required no employer, no degree, and no permission. Resourcefulness was America's first and best safety net. The common thread is resourcefulness, turning what you had, your labor, your land, your kitchen, your knowledge, into income when the formal economy had no place for you. Most of these methods weren't lost naturally. They were regulated away, industrialized out of existence, or simply forgotten when prosperity made them seem unnecessary. But the instinct that created them is still alive. And in a country where millions are rethinking what work means, these forgotten strategies might be the most relevant history lesson we have. If you made it this far, hit that like button for Winds of Thought and tell me in the comments, Which of these forgotten hustles would you try today?